Hello, I'm Lauren Haldeman, Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Nutrition Education and Behavior, where we are advancing research, policy, and practice. Each month, we select an article to feature as a press release with an accompanying podcast. And today's podcast article can be read in full at www.jneb.org for free for the next 3 months. And today, I'm speaking with Dr. Suzanna Martinez, who is the corresponding author for the article titled SNAP Student Rules Are Not So Snappy, Lessons Learned from a Qualitative Study of California County Agency Workers. I'm glad to have you with us, Suzanna.
Thank you, Lauren. And we're really excited to be able to share our study on the JNEB podcast.
Well, I'm excited to hear about it. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay, so you already introduced me. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics at UC San Francisco. UC San Francisco is one of 10 University of California campuses. And the research that I've been conducting focuses on student basic needs in the 10 campus University of California system. The research that I've been leading started around 2014, 2015, when I was a researcher at the UC Nutrition Policy Institute with my colleague and co-author, Lorene Ritchie.
Great. Thanks so much. And so specific to this paper, can you talk to us a little bit about what you did and what those results are?
Yeah, so I like to give a little bit of background about why we did the study first. And so, as I mentioned, this work started in 2014, 2015, when we found that over 40% of undergraduate students in the UC system were experiencing food insecurity, and about half of that, about 25% were experiencing food insecurity in the graduate student population. At this point in time, this research was starting to emerge in other universities, and there was a lot of disbelief. And so what really put this study or put the prevalence, out there and really validated all of this research was a report that came out in 2018 by the U.S. Government Accountability Office. And in that report, they weren't able to pinpoint the exact prevalence of food insecurity in the nation, but they did say that food insecurity was well over 30%. And one of the really important messages of this report was that they, in a national study, they found out that 3.3 million undergraduate students were SNAP eligible, but about 57% of them were not enrolled in SNAP. And so that was a really important message, and rightly so, they titled that report, "Better Information Could Help Eligible College Students Get SNAP," or something like that. So that report really did set the stage for our future research and how we address food insecurity in the UC system. So we know that about 30%, at least 30% of the students in the UC population are eligible to apply for SNAP, or CalFresh as we call it in California, and they're eligible through exemptions such as Pell Grant receipt or work study approval, being part of a education and research or education and training program. And so it was really important for us to start campus outreach and CalFresh assistance on campuses. And by 2018, we had staff on every one of our campuses who were conducting some type of CalFresh assistance or outreach. And at the same time, we also had the California Student Aid Commission, who was sending students official letters saying that they were eligible for CalFresh. And they knew this because they had access to their financial aid information. So we were doing a lot of work in the upfront, trying to get students to apply, working, doing a lot of outreach. But the one question that remained was, okay, so what happens after students hit send on their application? So we were able to get many students to apply for CalFresh, but we didn't know what happened to the applications once they got submitted. And so that was the main purpose of this study, was to better understand the student SNAP application process from the perspective of county agency workers who process student applications. So for the methods of the study, we interviewed 24 county workers in the state of California, and we started the interviews in about 2021. So it was an interesting time because we were during that pandemic period. And we invited staff in counties where there was a UC campus. So just to let you know, there are 58 counties in California, and we had 10 campuses. Of the 10 campuses, only 9 counties were able to participate at that time. One county wasn't able to participate because of so much overload due to the pandemic. So we had about 24 workers who ranged from eligibility workers, who are the staff who directly work with the student application and contact students. We interviewed policy specialists who interpret CalFresh related policies. And then we also interviewed a couple county supervisors. So some of the questions that we asked them to share the steps they followed when they processed the applications, whether they had trainings on the complexities of student applications, and to identify any types of aids or facilitators that help to facilitate the student application process. And so this was a qualitative study, so all of these 24 interviews and focus groups were transcribed and coded. We used inductive and deductive approach to code the data. And after the coding process, we identified 5 main themes among the workers in the 9 counties. And what we found, first, we found a need for more consistency in the interpretation and administration of CalFresh policies related to students, because at this point, there was inconsistent training on student exemptions across counties, which led to inconsistent practices. The second theme was that county workers perceive student exemptions and the application process as challenging for students. A lot of confusion around how to meet CalFresh exemptions, the amount of time to go through the verification process, and then just some students were just intimidated by the process and afraid to apply. The third theme was the administrative burden that county workers experienced in terms of tracking policies related to implementing the student rules. And then related to this, the fourth theme was that we identified facilitators of successfully processing student applications, which included eligibility workers creating cheat sheets and having desk guides that were provided by their county specialists, and all these ways of trying to track policy changes, because in California, the policies tend to change quite often. And then one of the really important facilitators was also having a contact on the college campus who the worker could call and help them troubleshoot through the student verification process for student cases. So it's a really complicated system. Having to deal with the student verifications isn't a streamlined process. So there's a lot of back and forth that might happen between the county worker, the student, and their campus contact, whether it's financial aid or somebody who's helping them with the process. It's a little bit complicated. And then lastly, the last theme was that more than half of those who were interviewed said that if they could change anything in the process, it would be to eliminate the student rule and to treat students like normal community members. And that was really important because as you know, the way that the federal language is worded says that if you're a student, you're not eligible for SNAP unless you meet like one of 20 exemptions. And the exemptions they're not so clear, and they're really hard to navigate for a student.
Thanks very much. I just first want to say I really want to commend you and your team for taking this on. This is a very impressive effort. Certainly listening to the statistics from 2018 with 3.3 million undergrad students being food insecure. That's quite staggering. And I appreciate the work that you've done.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I just wanted to clarify that it was 3.3 who are eligible for SNAP, but if they're eligible for SNAP, they're highly likely to be experiencing food insecurity for sure.
Sure. Thanks very much for that. Well, so your study brings up some really interesting questions. I could ask you many right now, but what I will kind of hone in on, just in terms of the message here, why is it so difficult for college students to obtain SNAP benefits?
So it is difficult, and going back to some of the things that the county worker said, there's a lot of so the application process is very straightforward. The student rule, like I mentioned, says that you're not eligible for SNAP unless you meet an exemption. Most students don't know that they're eligible, which was reported in that government accountability report, and the language has improved somewhat, but it's still very difficult. We have also there's a lot of inconsistency, at least in California, from county to county, how student exemptions are treated. So, for example, in one county, it might be that a student shows their financial aid form that shows that their work study approved, but in another county, to have that count as an exemption, they have to also show pay stubs from that work study job. And the problem is that there simply aren't enough work study jobs to keep up with the number of students who are approved for work study. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I call it the infamous interview. Anybody who applies for SNAP has to go through this interview process. And so it's quite intimidating, but it's also problematic because it's an unscheduled interview, and it comes from a random number, usually, so unidentified number. And when students get those calls, they might be in class, they might be working, they think it's spam. And so if they don't pick up, there's no way to call back. And so that's another hurdle. And I think that's a hurdle it's a pretty common problem, not just for students.
Yeah, there certainly are a lot of complexities to this. So in thinking about that, are there specific facilitators that help? I mean, in addition to all of the work that you're doing, are there other ways to support these students in applying and receiving?
Yeah. Well, I think to begin with, based on our findings at the state level, having consistent training, guidebooks that could help eliminate confusion across counties would be a major facilitator. Thinking about what could be done at the national level, I think the pandemic served as a really good example of how to streamline the application process. There were several things that were done during that time. In California, they waived the application process in addition to the verification process. But at the national level, they also said that anybody who has a zero expected family contribution is eligible to apply. And so those things really streamlined the process. And there's current legislation in Congress right now, one of them being the federal Enhanced Access to SNAP Act. And what the EATS Act would do would be, it would expand SNAP eligibility to college students who are enrolled at least part-time by eliminating the work for food SNAP rules. And so that's something that we have our eye on at this time, which is a really important piece of legislation.
Well, it certainly is. And as I said to you before we started this interview, this work is really important, and for the journal and for the society, certainly publishing our college student food insecurity position paper this year is a message that this is something that we have to address, and your team is doing that. So we really appreciate that. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention?
Yeah, sure. I would like to thank all of the incredible co-authors who contributed to this research and to the article, and to our amazing basic needs team and coordinators on all of our campuses, which made this study possible. It's really hard to interview county agency workers. They're just a really hard to get to population. So my partners, Ruben Canedo and Tim Galarno, have been really instrumental in that, as well as our support from California Department of Social Services.
Definitely a big team effort.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Suzanna, for spending this time with me. And to all of our listeners, remember, you can read this article in full at www.jneb.org for free for the next 3 months.
Thank you.